Welcome to the Dojo Talk Podcast. Please remove them shoes before entry.
The master is here, and you still have not taken off your shoes.
Yeah. Living every day to define man's mission. Look into the sky for divine transmission. Deaf man's vision makes the blind man listen. Eyes on the prize, this is blind ambition. Thank you. Blind ambition.
Yo, what's going on, world? Welcome to another episode of the Dojo Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Suryo Sensei, and we are on episode 5. Yep. We're on episode 5. This week, I don't think I'm going to be here too long, but I say that every week, and I lie. But I don't have too much to cover, but there are still two topics I would like to dive into. I know it's been a minute since I dropped an episode. I've been having some terrible sinus problems. I was definitely not in condition to talk for more than 30-40 minutes at a time, but I've been stepping my antibiotic game up, so feeling a lot better. Today I want to talk about one movie and one album. Actually, you know what? I'll make that 2 movies. The first review is going to be really quick. But yeah, so actually, you know what? I ain't going to waste time. I'm going to jump right into it. So just brief note, real quick, I forgot to mention probably about 2-3 podcasts ago that I even went to see Star Wars Rogue One, and I never even gave my opinion on it. So real quick, I'm not going to dive into it. Dope movie. I was on the fence at first about seeing it, like when I first saw the trailer. I'm glad I just went ahead and saw it. I wasn't expecting it to be anything special. I thought it was awesome. Donnie Yen was awesome. I have no complaints about that movie. And yes, I did like it better than Force Awakens. So just throw that out there real quick. I'm pretty sure everybody who's wanted to see it has seen it by now. But in case you haven't, if you were on the fence like me, go see it. The last like 10 seconds of that movie is worth admission price alone. And that's all I'm going to say. So Star Wars Rogue One was definitely dope. Now that I got that out the way, the movie that I wanted to talk about was just a random Netflix movie. I was home one day. This was actually a couple days ago when I still wasn't really feeling so good. So you know how it is when you're not feeling up to speed. Just kind of sit home, chill out. Been watching a lot of anime or whatever, and then I hopped on Netflix trying to find something to watch, and I came across this movie Spectral. And of course, I'd never heard of this movie at all. The title of it and kind of like the cover image kind of caught my eye. And I saw that it had 4 stars. And then I read the little film synopsis. And I was like, all right, I'll give this a try. See if it's, anything good. And it was decent. But I'll tell y'all what, I'll try to describe best what I saw. I will say, keep in mind, I'm not as good with movie reviews as I am music, being that especially for most movies, I watched them once and I never watched them again. So I'm running a lot off of pure memory. So just bear with me. But as far as Spectral goes, let me give some shout outs to actors and directors. Gotta make sure everybody gets their proper credit. This movie was directed by Nick Matthew. I'm going to guess it's Matthew, spelled Mathieu. A little fancy, but I guess it's Nick Matthew. The stars of this movie, at least according to IMDb, are James Badge Dale, Emily Mortimer, and Bruce Greenwood. So Spectral was, I guess we had to categorize it as kind of like a military / sci-fi movie. In short, James Badge Dale, who in the movie plays, I believe his name was Dr. Klein. He was kind of like some kind of like technician. He worked a lot with the technology that the U.S. military uses. In particular, he helped design these special goggles that they have that kind of let you see a lot more than what your average goggles would pick up. And what happens in the very beginning of the movie is you see the U.S. forces, they're invading. I think they're in like Europe, which is I think where the main conflict of the movie takes place. It's kind of like a civil war type situation over in Europe. So the soldiers are in Europe, doing their thing, doing their mission or whatever, and they come across this, for lack of a better word, a Spectral, which by definition means ghost or ghost-like. And it was kind of like this ghost-like figure that one of the soldiers ran into, and these little ghost-like figures take no prisoners, and they can literally kill you with one touch. So that's kind of how the beginning of the movie starts out. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. You probably could guess it coming. Soldier runs into the ghost-like soldier. He sees it for a little bit. He's not quite sure what it is. By the time he realizes what even happens, he gets touched. He dies. That's a wrap. And pretty much what happens is Dr. Klein, he gets called on by the U.S. forces, and being that he's an expertise with the goggles and like the technology, they bring him in to kind of just get his opinion on what is it that we're fighting, like what are these ghosts, are these like actual ghosts, or do you think this is like some kind of technology? And that's kind of what the premise of the movie is. And eventually Dr. Klein goes into the field, like literally he goes out there with the troops, and they just pretty much spend the movie kind of trying to figure out what it is that they're going up against. As far as characters, the thing about this movie, I did like it. I think it's a great would be a stretch. It's a good movie. It's like a solid B-list movie. Like they did everything good, but didn't do anything like too great. So like character wise, Emily Mortimer's character, Fran Madison, she was like the head of, I'm probably getting the agencies wrong, CIA, FBI, those important people. She was head of one of those like top agencies that was also investigating, this supernatural phenomenon, if that's what you want to call it. And her character was cool. I didn't like her at first. They were trying to uncover what they were dealing with after that first footage of the soldier encountering the ghost soldier, so to speak. And she was going to give her superiors the excuse that, I'm not going to say excuse, but theory that the ghost soldiers are just soldiers in advanced camouflage, which, I mean, I get it. When they first encounter the soldiers, you don't have a lot to go on. But to me, common sense will tell you clearly there's more than just some camouflage. Like, even if it's camouflage, how are these soldiers killing people with like literally one touch? But yeah, you get to see her and Dr. Klein work together. All of the other characters in the film, aside from those two, are just kind of mostly soldiers, commanders, those important type people. But none of them really stick out, but they play their roles, I guess, as well as you could ask them to. Which, like I said before, the film executes everything good, nothing great. So acting wise, I mean, everything was solid, no Oscar performances, but everything's passable. It's believable, I guess I could say. On the story tip, I do like kind of it was different. Like I feel like in most other movies, you would probably know like right off the bat, like, all right, they just got some super technology that we don't have. We got to figure out how to beat it. Well, they would know off the bat. We're fighting ghosts. We got to figure out, what it is. How do we combat this? And in this movie, I think the first half does a good job of, I guess you could say, building tension or like mystique as to what these soldiers actually are. Now, I'm not going to give that away. They definitely go pretty deep into it, especially like the latter half of the movie. You find out exactly what it is they're fighting. But I like the first half of the movie. You get to see a lot of the ghost soldiers. You get to see a lot of encounters with the troops trying to fight the ghost soldiers. More often than not, the encounters don't don't really go too well. The ghost soldiers are actually really dope. They move really fast. I like the sound design of the movie. They made them sound like really cool when they move, and like this little like blast effect that happens when they touch you. So that was done really well. The movie, I don't say it's something about this movie. As much as I did enjoy it, I thought it was solid. But like it almost felt like it was missing something. Like the story progressed, I guess you could kind of say predictable. It's kind of a move from point A to point B movie. We're going to do this mission. Oh, this mission didn't go the way we thought it would, so now we have to go to this place. Like the story isn't really intricate in that matter, and like in how it progresses. You kind of clearly know, aside from the mystery of what the soldiers are, but aside from that, you know what's going on. And I can't point out what it is about this movie that there's like A-list like blockbuster movies, and then this movie would fall short of the A-list blockbuster. It's like a B-list, like it was almost there, but there was something missing. I don't know what it was. Something maybe they could have done better that kind of kept it from being, on the level of, I was about to say The Matrix, which would have been a terrible comparison. But, it could have been like one of those blockbuster movies, but instead it didn't hit that mark. Like I said, I don't know if it was just the acting or maybe the story could have used a few more plots and twists. I'm not sure, because like I said, everything in the movie was done solid. Like the camera work was solid. The action sequences are really good. It does get towards the latter half of the movie, it almost starts to get like a video game feeling though. I won't go in too deep, but you start to see some of the weapons these soldiers are using, and it looks like something out of like Gears of War or like Halo. And you start seeing some of the guns they get. But I don't know. There was something about this movie that like it could have been, it just could have been like an A-list, but it wasn't quite there. But it was almost there. Yeah, I guess it's not too much else I can say about this film without like spoiling it. But yeah, man, if you want a solid Netflix movie, it is something a little different. Like I said, with the whole ghost soldier aspect going on. Like I said, you got ghosts, they're running around, they're jumping, and I don't say they're floating, but they can jump really high. They're running into tanks and knocking them over. Like it's a dope movie. It's a dope movie. It's just not great. It's a solid movie. So I'd say, man, if maybe one night you want to watch something good, you don't feel like going out to the movies because you don't want to pay $12.99 for a movie ticket and $30 in popcorn and all that all that crazy stuff. Sit home and check this out. Like I said, it got most of the average stars I've seen. I think on the reviews were 4, which is also what I gave it. So like I said, it's a solid movie. It's not gonna blow your mind. I think it's about an hour and 40 something minutes long, but it's a solid watch. It's something a tad bit different, I would think, at least for me. Even though I don't watch a ton of movies, but something a little different than your average like military flick. I like the sci-fi elements, and it also kind of raises questions of, I guess you could say, like morality and war, and how far, I guess, we're willing to go when war happens. And you know what, I was almost about to spoil it, so I'm gonna shut up now. But yeah, man, Spectral, go give it a look. Definitely, I will give it my stamp of approval. Not that probably means much to you, but if you trust my judgment at all, go give it a shot. It's a dope flick that's worth checking out. But that's all on that. Now, I would like to switch gears to an album that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time. And if you listen to my very first podcast, I mentioned this album in brief when I did my top 20 of 2016. This came in, I do not have my list in front of me, so I might be lying on my own list. I think this came in at 3. It was top 5. I know for sure it was top 5. I want to say it was either 3 or 4. The album I'm referring to is Polymer by Tonedeff. So the reason I wanted to talk about this album, of course I want to talk about it because obviously I wouldn't talk about an album that I didn't enjoy or I didn't find at least remotely interesting. But I felt like the coverage this album got just wasn't enough. Like, I felt like more people should have been talking about this album. Like, I remember the day that I got it, and I remember listening to it a couple of times. I was like, man, this album is so good. I was like, I wonder what the rest of the world is thinking of this album. So you go to Google, type in Tonedeff Polymer review. I get like 0 results. Or you might get like maybe couple 2 here or there. And I'm like, bro, why isn't nobody, you mean tell me I'm the only person, you know, am I the only person on earth that listens to this? Like, I know somebody else on earth listened to this album and felt at least somewhat similar about it like I do. Like, but yeah, I was kind of dumbfounded at how little, like, press this album got. I get it, Tonedeff's an underground rapper, but still, like, I feel like this should have been picked up a little more. So this isn't me pitch sailing the album. I don't know Tonedeff personally, but I wanted to dedicate an episode to this album because to me it was worth it. So I will spend the next however long this podcast takes trying to explain to you why I thought this album was so good and why it deserved the ranking that it got in my top 20 for 2016. So for anyone who does not know who Tonedeff is, he is a rapper, songwriter, producer, I believe label owner, Q&5. I think that's his label, his imprint. He's been in the game for a pretty long time. I mean, he's been associated with dudes like Pac FM, Substantial. I know he's done a couple of tracks with Cunning Linguist. So if you're familiar with those artists who I just named, if not, you should check those guys out too. But if you're familiar with those artists I just named, you know how far back those dudes go, how long they've been in the game. He's been in the game just as long, if not longer, than they have. If you've never listened to Tonedeff, he's definitely known as kind of being an MC's MC. Like, he's the definition of a rapper. And more specifically, I guess I would say a lot of people enjoy his music because of the pretty much like flawless double time flow or rapid fire flow, whatever you want to call it. He does it almost better than anybody I've ever heard. And you definitely get to hear it on this album. Man, I honestly don't know where to start with this album. It was so much to take in. Just the way this album was constructed, which in itself was crazy. So Polymer is kind of a combination of 3 EPs and then a final EP, and they all kind of form musical hip-hop Voltron or whatever, and that completes the Polymer album. And the 3 EPs, which came out over the course of about 3 years, actually, you know what? Just to be more specific, because I'm on Tonedeff's Bandcamp right now, the first EP was Glutton, and that came out in 2013. So there was the Glutton EP, then there was the Demon EP, and then there was the Hunter EP. So when Glutton came out, Glutton was the introduction to kind of Tonedeff coming back after a long hiatus, and there was also the introduction to the public kind of finding out that he's gearing up for another full-length album. And when I first heard the concept of, he's going to do 3 EPs, the 3 EPs are going to cover different topics, I was like, all right, it sounds dope, it sounds creative. Haven't really seen anybody do this kind of rollout for an album before, so this should be interesting. When I first listened to the Glutton EP, I was like, I don't know. It had this really electronic vibe I wasn't quite used to hearing from him. So that EP, to be honest, and out of the 3 that came out before Polymer, that was probably my least favorite. That one didn't do too much for me, mainly because of the production. It was really heavy on the electronic side. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I applaud creativity. I like trying things that you don't normally do. I guess to me, maybe it was a little too far left field at the time. But I was like, you know what? I still got to keep an eye on this because there are a couple more EPs he's going to drop. So why not keep checking out? So he comes back with the Hunter EP the following year, which I believe I did a list for 2014, which I'm pretty sure is when the Hunter EP came out. And that made it to my top 20 that year. I really enjoyed that one. It had an electronic-ish feel, but I felt like it was a little harder, a little grimier than Glutton was, which made me enjoy it a lot more. And then he released... I had them flip-flop. Hunter came out last. The Demon EP came out before that. And actually, the Demon EP I liked a little better than Glutton. And then Hunter came out, and that was the last one. And when Hunter came out, I was like, all right, I'm on board. I like this. And then he takes another break after Hunter, and then Polymer finally drops. And Polymer drops, and I had a few concerns. So, like I said earlier, the kind of rollout of the album was that you're going to listen to... This album is the culmination of 3 other EPs, plus a final EP, which I believe was called Phantom, and then that entirety of those bodies of work make Polymer. And so I'm thinking, all right, so that means on this Polymer album, I'm going to have heard about 75-80% of these songs already. At least that's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, so I'm going to get an album that I've heard most of it before, plus, the Phantom EP, which you can only get by listening to the Polymer album. So I'm going to hear songs that mostly I've heard before, plus maybe 4 or 5 new songs. So it's like, am I really going to be that excited for this? Like, how good can it be if I've heard most of it already? He's just adding about 3 or 4 more songs. And what he did, which worked very well, one thing I think that's underrated or overlooked, I can't even just say in hip-hop, I feel like in music, in any musical genre, sequencing of albums, of songs on albums is very important. I don't know if anybody pays attention to it, but the way you sequence songs, it affects heavily how well an album flows together, how cohesive it sounds. And even though some of the, like I said, a lot of the songs on the Polymer album I had heard before, the way they were sequenced made it fit, because I was afraid that, tracks 1 through tracks 1 through 5 will be all of the Glutton songs, and then tracks 6 through 10 will be all the Demon songs, so on and so forth. But it didn't go like that. He kind of broke them up, which you would think would maybe not make it sound so good, because you would think it would probably flow together if all the EPs, which deal with like similar issues, like I said, because the EPs are themed, you would think that would make the album flow better. But he found a way to break them up, rearrange them, add them in with the final EP to make the album, and this album flows together perfectly. So that's the first thing that stood out. That was just by looking at the track listing. I was like, all right. And after the first listen, I was like, okay, this album flows really good. Sonically, which I guess that'll be the first thing I talk about with this album, is like the production and just the sound of it. This album, I believe, is entirely produced by Tonedeff, minus one track. Let me give proper credit, shout out. Okay, yeah, the only track that Tonedeff did not produce was Glutton, which was produced by number 95, I think. Yeah, so number 95, so shout out to him. He's the only other production credit on this album, but other than that, yeah, Tone did the entire soundscape of this album, and the production on this album is crazy. Like, this is amazing work, considering that one person did this almost entirely by himself. And if I was to describe the sound of this album, it's like a movie soundtrack that's like an electronic / hip hop like symphony almost. Like I can't even really call this a hip hop album. It definitely, and I think I said this when I mentioned this album in my my top 25 or top 20 list, that this album has elements of hip hop in it, but I would not call this a hip hop album, because it bends so many genres, and it's not even just rapping on here. Like, he sings. I'll get into that later though. I want to kind of stick to the production, but like, just to, I guess, give an example, the intro track, The Things You Don't See Coming, which is the title track on Polymer. It starts off nice and slow. It's real mellow, and then the beat just builds. It literally sounds like an intro to like a movie, like it's building up to something epic. And yeah, it does a really great job of just like pulling you in. Like, you don't really know what's happening, but you hear like this epic beat build up, and you're like, all right, I'm in here. I'm locked in. I don't know what I'm about to get, but I'm ready to listen to it. And then from there, the album doesn't really lose a step. I'm not a fan of not every song on here, but even the songs I don't like, I still notice the production and how they do a great job of capturing like emotion. The track, actually, since I've talked about it a few times, the track Glutton is not one of my favorite tracks on here, but that song, it's about gluttony. And like, if gluttony had a sound, it would probably feel uncomfortable, which this track feels like that. Like, it's really loud. He does this really, not sure what the voice effect is, but he makes his voice sound really weird, and the track just sounds really uncomfortable to listen to. And it does a perfect job of capturing the emotion that he's going for. Same with the track Demon, which probably has like one of the fastest flows lyrically wise on this track. But it's another track that it's really hectic. There's a lot going on. Everything's moving really fast. I think I posted a review of this on my WordPress page, which I'll probably leave a link to description to below. But I'd mentioned this track in my review, and one of the people who commented said that the track was supposed to relate to like anxiety, and after listening to it, it made a lot of sense. I don't know if any of you out there, hopefully you don't, but if you've ever suffered from anxiety, it can feel like that, where things are hectic, your mind is moving really fast, and you can't really calm yourself down. And that's exactly what like the production of that track sounds like. It's just everything, including like the lyrical flow, everything's bouncing around, everything's moving really fast, and you're just like, whoa, we need to chill out. But the track does not chill out. It keeps going. So I love tracks like that are like almost uncomfortable to listen to, but the production is varied. Then you get tracks like Competitive Nature, which would, I guess, be like I call it like the anthem of the album. I love the DJ scratches in there. It's like it has like an anthem kind of feel to it. And that one probably knocks a bit harder than some of the other tracks on here. What I could talk, oh boy. Sunrise. Volume 2, actually, I should say. So, and actually, yeah, I'm glad I did mention this track. So, like I said before, I mentioned the sequencing of the album. Another great thing he did is, like I said, I was worried about fearing that, oh man, I might be bored with this album because I've heard most of the songs already. Well, what he did, not on every track, but on a few of them, he reworked the original beats. I believe the lyrics, for the most part, pretty much stayed the same. But for Sunrise, for example, I think Sunrise was on the Gluttony EP. And for the Polymer album, Sunrise is on here, but he reworked the beat. And this beat is so much better than the Gluttony EP. It's another one of those tracks that has that really, burping on my podcast. This is another one of those tracks that has that real like cinematic build-up feel to it. And that's another track that just does a great job of capturing the emotion of the song. And this entire album makes you just kind of feel like you're going on an auditory, is that a word? We're going to say that's a word for the day. We're going to say that's a word for the day. But it sounds like it's like an auditory journey of somebody's life. So, and the production just does a good job of just taking you on the ride. And you get tracks like Sunrise, which is a track kind of about, it's kind of everyday average dude just kind of getting beat up by life, trying to make it through, trying to keep it moving, keep it pushing, but life is giving you the business. But eventually you find your light at the end of the tunnel. And I also love that track. I don't know if this is related to the same video, but I remember a while ago when he was first working on the EPs, and he had posted it was a video I came across on YouTube about him. He was trying to, I guess, get like a choir for one of his songs, and I'm wondering if this is the song that video had showed, because there's a nice like choir feeling, or I can't say feeling, they're actually singing, but there's like a nice choir outro to this song that ends it just so perfectly. And it's probably my favorite song on the track, lyric wise and just sound wise. It's it's just awesome. Man, most of these tracks production wise are just awesome. The only, I can't say bad beat, I would say like the most tame, the most normal beat you would hear on this album would probably be Use Me. That's the only track that I heard, and I think that was one of the singles, which didn't really like stick out. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because it's not a bad beat. It's just, if you compare that instrumental to the other tracks on here, like that one just seems normal compared to everything else on here. And then you got tracks like Narcissist. That's another track that kind of like the Demon track that I mentioned earlier. It's really hectic. I like this one though because this beat is really dark. It's kind of menacing, and the track Narcissist is lyrically it's definitely about that. It's about narcissism and I guess us kind of being obsessed with ourselves, obsessed with lives we see other people lead, but it has this just really dark, menacing, hard-hitting feeling to it. And that's another one that just, it's a real in-your-face, kind of makes you uncomfortable. But I love that one. That's probably another second, probably my second favorite song, I would say. I'll probably say Sunrise is first. Narcissist probably be a close second. Man, what else production-wise can I even say about this? Like, it just, like I said, man, it's an audio journey. It's like a movie in audio form. It's instrumentals that are cinematic, instrumentals that are fast-paced and hectic. I guess I would have to venture now into the lyric side because the lyrics and his flow do also a great job of complementing the instrumentals. On a lot of the cinematic sounding tracks, you hear a lot of singing. As for example with that, I guess you could say the track Phantom. Actually, I think that's an entirely sung track, and his tone has pretty good singing. Not great or mind blowing, but it definitely is. It fits very, very, very well with what he's trying to do, and it fits the moods of these tracks. And I like his singing, or I like just the vocal delivery of this album because it varies so much. He uses so many just different flows. Like I said, on a track like Demon, it's just this rapid fire, in your face. Sometimes you can't understand what he's saying because he's rapping so fast. Like, when I first got this album, I pre-ordered one of the deluxe editions, and my download came with like a booklet link with the lyrics in it. So I was listening to the album and I was reading the lyrics as I was listening, which made it even that much more great. But sometimes I needed to read the lyrics because, like I said, on tracks like Demon, man, he raps so fast that at points that you're gonna miss what he's saying. And like I said, on tracks like Demon, he's going real fast. On tracks like Phantom, he's singing. On tracks like Sunrise, he does both. And then you kind of get tracks like Competitive Nature, which I mentioned earlier. And I like that track lyrically because that's one of the more, I'm going to say regular flows. Kind of slows it down. Not too fast, not too crazy. It fits perfect with the beat. That one you'll understand what he's saying. You'll know what's going on. And then you get tracks like And They Watched Them, which is the second track on the album. I love the flow on that album because it's really slow. It's really dark. I love the effect, the really like demon-like effect he puts on his voice during the hook. He's so much the variety of just flows and singing and rapping, and it's all over the place. But I don't mean that in a bad way. It's all over the place, but it all fits really well. And then on top of crazy production, on top of variety of flows and everything, you get content. And you get content of just, he covers, like I said, the album is like an audio, it's like an audio movie. It's like listening to somebody tell you their life story in a musical form. And of course, if somebody's gonna tell you their life story, you gotta have a lot of different topics to talk about, and he touches on everything. I'm looking at the track list and I'm trying to figure out where do I start. Like I said, I mentioned Narcissist earlier, which is literally a track about narcissism and just the different ways you can obsess over certain things, whether it be fame or you're obsessing over yourself, you're obsessing over what other people have. And you got tracks like Five Sisters, which is a really crazy dope concept. Try to do my best to explain this. I might get this wrong, but that track it's him describing his mom, but instead of like describing his mom directly, he's using his 5 sisters and their traits to kind of tie them all in together. And it's just this, I'm probably not explaining it right, but if you listen to it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's such a dope concept. I've never heard anybody like concept wise craft a song like that. You got Filthy Volume 2 on here. I ain't gonna go into Filthy too much. Filthy is exactly what the title of the track implies. I'm not gonna go into it. I just say don't listen to that around your kids. It's everything the title says it is. But that also is another track that I think that was that on Glutton? I think that was on Glutton. I can't remember. That was on one of the earlier EPs too, and that was another track that he reworked the beat for. That one also has a video, which crazy. I've actually never watched the video for that song, so I might actually do that after I'm finished recording this. But yeah. So you got tracks like Filthy, which the lyrics sound crazy, but it does cover a theme of just like lust, but lust to like the maximum. Like it's lust to like full capacity lust. Like I'm not gonna get into the rest of it, but that's just another gamut of emotion, another part of life, I guess you could say. The track Moment, which is literally a song about time and about wasting time and about how valuable time is and can be and why we shouldn't waste it and things like that. And man, and then They Watched Them, which I mentioned that track earlier. That's a dope track. That's the second track, as I said earlier. I like that track though because it kind of describes Tonedeff's upbringing in music and about how he wanted to get in the game. And I like the song structure of the album because he'll say something like, you know, he did X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. And then the hook is like, and they watched him and they laughed. And it's like people, you know, trashing him when he first started, saying he was whack or making fun of him because he sings. And, you know the stuff. You know how it goes. You're trying to branch into the music game and people tear you down for one reason or another. And that's kind of him telling his story like that. And I actually like how it followed up by the next track, Hunter, which is also another reworked beat from one of the previous EPs. And that track is kind of like a full-blown, not a diss, but kind of a full-blown, I guess you could say, middle finger to the industry, which is very, very lyrically well written, which is another great point about this album, man. For people who say things like, oh, hip-hop isn't poetry, blah, 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 bruh, you wildin' out. This album, I ain't going to recreate none of the flows on this podcast here because I ain't about to embarrass myself like that. But if you listen to this on Bandcamp, open the lyric tab. He has lyrics for every track on here. This album is very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? I emphasize, very well written. Like, it's poetic, but not corny. It's like poetic, and it can be braggadocious. It can be emotional. It's just super. It's very well written, man. Like, he has really great vocabulary. Like, he has a great way with words. He knows how to string just great like stanzas together. If that makes sense. Just like you can tell this is somebody who takes pride in their penmanship. Like, he's not just saying words just to say words or create shock value. Like, his pen game is A1. Like, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. Like, I guess if I could draw a comparison, I never reviewed this album, but I also mentioned it in my top 20. Kai's album, Honor Killed the Samurai, which is another dope album that if you're listening and you've never heard, definitely go listen to that album. But the reason I like that album so much was because it was so well written. That's another album when I say people who say things like, oh, rap isn't poetry, they're not good writers. Bruh, chill out. Go listen to that and get back with me. This album is albums like that, like Honor Killed the Samurai, like this Polymer album. They're very well written, and anybody of any background, even if you're not a fan of rappers, or like, you gotta respect the pen game he has, the word choice, the way he can put sentences together. It's all just, it's phenomenal. Like, that's what this album is. This was probably one of the most creative experiences. This is what this album was. It was an experience to listen to. And I take it back from what I said in my other podcast, because I mentioned that I like this album, but I would have to be in like a certain mood to listen to it. Well, I've had a lot of time to sit with this album since I made that list, and I still, to this day, I still listen to this album. And this was released, this was July 8th, 2016 is when this album came out. I'm still listening to this album on a daily. Maybe not the whole way through, I have other songs that I enjoy listening to more than others. But, like, I go back and listen to this, and I'm like, man, like, this album was so dope. It was so well executed in every fashion. Like I said, excuse me, I'm sorry, I ate before this podcast, so now I'm burping up my food, but, but, man, like I said, I don't know what else to say. This album was just, there was nothing really negative I could say about this. Like I said, there was a small stretch of songs, I'll say, just to be fair. I can go track by track. Things You Don't See Coming, dope, wild, crazy. And then They Watched Them, crazy. Hunter, crazy. Competitive Nature, dope. Then there's a small stretch in the middle of tracks they're not bad, but they weren't like my favorite tracks. So Demon, Cinder, which I think Cinder's like almost like an instrumental. I don't believe there are even any vocals on that track. But Demon, Cinder, Moment, and Glutton. Like, that small stretch of 4 songs is the only spot really on the album where like I said, I don't dislike them. I don't think they're bad songs. But that's like the one minor section of the album I kind of skipped through. But right after Glutton, it goes to Sunrise, which is like my favorite track. Goes to Phantom, which is another one of my favorite tracks. Goes to Five Sisters, which is another dope track. Use Me and Filthy, another 2 songs. They're not bad. Not my favorite, but they're still good, if that even makes sense. So I might, every now and then, I'll skip past those 2 if I'm listening. But then it goes to Narcissist, which is another favorite track. Then it goes to More Like You, featuring, is it Fjer? It's FJER. I think that's an artist that's signed to his label. But yeah, man, I haven't even mentioned that track. I know this album ends with the track Control, which is like a 9-minute long, just kind of vent session about life and tribulations. I almost feel, as good as Control was, I almost feel like More Like You would have been the perfect closer for this album. More Like You is a phenomenal track about Tone, I believe, talking about kind of like the strained relationship that he has with his dad. And not, well, I'll throw this out there. It's not really like a relatable track, because luckily I have a great relationship with my dad, but this track though, man, like, it's so, another track that when I look at like the lyrics, so well written. Fajer adds really nice singing to complement the beat. It's another one of those tracks that definitely kind of like builds up. But yeah, that track is phenomenal, man. And like I said, the album ends with Control, which is a 9-minute, just, man, it's like a 9-minute just lyrical vent about just life, pitfalls, downfalls, getting in your own way, trying to get out of your head, just all of life's problems rolled up into 9 minutes or so. Really almost 10 minutes, because it's 9 minutes and 46 seconds. But, you know. But yeah, man. This album. If you have not listened to Tonedeff's Polymer album, if you haven't listened to Tonedeff, listen to this. Please do. If you like it, when you listen to it, please support the artist, man. Like, buy the music. I will leave relevant links about this album in the description. I encourage you, like I said, man, if you listen to this album and you enjoy it, buy it. This is a dude who deserves every penny he can get that's related to this album. We're always saying, everybody's making the same kind of music. Nobody's doing anything innovative, blah, 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 blah. Here's somebody who's doing something different, something innovative, something I guarantee you is different than what you probably listened to recently. And not only is it different, it's great, it's good. It's because some people do different, and it's not, being different doesn't equate to always being good. But this is great. Like, he did something different. He executed it perfectly. Like, I don't know. I could go on. Just I have so many positive things to say about this album. Phenomenal listen, man. Just Tone, if by chance you hear this, which I know can happen via the interwebs. People spread things. I'm not a huge podcast at all. I don't average that many listeners. But yeah, if you happen to hear this, man, bravo. Like, this album's dope. Like, this album's serious. I have not stopped listening to this since July 8th or whatever that release date was. I'm going to keep listening to this. Like, this was ambitious. It was creative, but more importantly, it was executed to perfection. A lot of people can make a creative project, something ambitious, but they don't always execute. This did all of the above and probably more. But I'm coming up close on an hour. I've been talking about this album for a long time. So yeah, I'm gonna get ready to get out of here. I can hear my voice kind of going, and I'm still not 100%, so I'm sorry if I sound a little weird during this podcast, sound a little nasally, but Tonedeff, Polymer, phenomenal album. As I said, I will leave relevant links to the album in the description box below that you should go check out. I will also probably sometime this week, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, me and my homie the Anti-Cool will definitely be giving you guys a review on fights. Man, there's been a lot of fights that have happened this last week or so, and not just UFC. Man, I've seen Glory. I watched the Frampton in the Cruz fight. So I don't know. We'll figure out what fights we want to talk about, and that'll probably be coming to you guys sometime this week. And that's it, man. So Spectral, go check that out on Netflix if you want to watch a solid military sci-fi flick, some ghost soldiers and all that good stuff. And on the musical tip, Tonedeff's Polymer album, phenomenal project, one of the best of 2016. Go check that out. Go support the homie with your money. I emphasize if you like it when you listen to it. Go give that album a listen. And yeah, man, support good music, support good art. And that's it. So, I'm your host, Serial Sensei. This has been the Dojo Talk Podcast. I will catch you guys later.